welcome back to the High Low Sports Podcast. I'm DJ, joined by Kelsey, and we got a pretty good show today. We're starting, of course, with Hard Knocks, because that's a big thing going on in the sports world right now. First episode's done, the second one's coming out any day now. And it was a doozy, but the one thing that we didn't see on that first episode, Antonio Brown, AB, Mr. Big Chest himself, with some controversy over his helmet of all things, threatening to retire if he doesn't get to use his old helmet. Kelsey, this is kind of like the Tom Brady thing a few years ago, just a lot more extreme.
Yeah, this is definitely odd. I don't know. I guess as a kid, I was never a guy that had the same helmet year after year, so it never bothered me. I don't really understand the idea of needing this helmet, to be the same thing, and especially when it's not even protecting your head. He's already had concussion issues. Like, if it doesn't protect you, why are you so worried about it? I know maybe vision might be an issue, but there's helmets that don't jut out as much as he's claiming they are, and I think he's just being a baby right now. I think he's being the prima donna that we're all worried he might be when he left Pittsburgh.
I will agree with him on one thing, that some of the helmets do really kind of screw with your vision, especially the newer ones that are supposed to help with your head issues. They kind of go farther up on your temples. When I was playing in high school, I got different helmets. I think it was my junior year that kind of did the same thing. I remember switching with somebody else just because I wanted to use a different one that works better. So on one hand, I kind of get it, but I never threatened to quit over the helmet. It was always just a matter of vision, but I can't imagine all of them are that bad to where you can't see a football and can't catch it. And if it really is that bad, then I want his vision, or whatever contacts he's wearing. I kind of want those, because if he catches the ball purely with his eyes, that's impressive.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I've never seen somebody be so upset about a helmet. Like, Tom Brady was mad, but he was just like, whatever. Drew Brees had to switch helmets. Phillip Rivers had to switch helmets. There was a total of 130 players last year that were forced to switch their helmets. Just be one of them. Who cares? I don't know. You had 2 years to get used to a new helmet. Why are you just now getting a new helmet?
I don't know. I just don't like it. I hope it all works out, because the league's better when Antonio Brown's playing. The Raiders are going to be better with AB playing. Derek Carr can sling it. I think this could be a career resurgence for both of them, honestly, this move. Gruden and AB could have some fun. I think it's good for the league if he plays, so I want him to play. Still one of the best receivers in football, one of the best overall players. He can do it all. Hopefully a helmet doesn't derail one of the best careers we've seen in a long time. That'd be a shame.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like Barry Sanders. Does he retire early just to protect himself? But at this point, he's not even protecting himself. He's just being a diva about it. I don't know. This is extreme. This is something only, I think, Antonio Brown. This is the most Antonio Brown issue, next to his other issue with his feet, that we've seen since his last issue with Snapchat. This is just ridiculous.
There's always something with him, and I hope it all works out. I hope he's not remembered for his antics. I hope he's remembered as being probably the second or third most dominant receiver we've ever seen during his heyday, honestly. For a 4-year period, there are very few receivers can match his overall productivity. And hopefully it continues. He was still pretty good last year in spite of everything. He wasn't the best receiver in football last year necessarily, but his drop-off, quote-unquote, put him at 4, maybe 5. Still was, I think, led the league in touchdowns, if not was top 2 or 3, so...
Yeah.
Let's hope it works out and it's not a helmet issue.
It's almost like the T.O. effect. Do you put up with the excess stuff for the production? And arguably, he is way more productive than... I don't even think arguably. He is way more productive than T.O. ever was in his career, so...
I think he's more productive than pretty much every receiver besides maybe Randy Moss and Jerry Rice at their high points. I think no one else's high points match his high points besides those two, arguably. Maybe Marvin Harrison during those early 2000s, maybe, just because he did break the receptions record that one year, but he didn't get the yards, the yak, the punt returns, the touchdowns like AB does either.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I don't know. AB is a weird enigma.
He's nothing we've ever seen before, that's for sure. But one thing's for sure is if he's able to work hard, if he's able to practice, he will work hard and he will be fantastic on the field if he's all in. So.
Oh yeah, he'll definitely be a top 5 receiver.
If we get him on the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And since we're talking about top 5s, we're leading into the NFL season. This looks like it's going to be a good one on paper. So one thing we're going to do over the next few weeks is we're going to rank our top 5 by position groups across the NFL. And today, since defensive line, linebackers are all kind of interchangeable, it's almost like basketball with how positionless some things in the front 7 can be. We're going to simplify it to pass rush and offensive line. We're basically going to cover the trenches today. So where do you want to start first, Kesley? Offensive line or pass rushers?
Well, as a big guy myself, I'm definitely a bigger fan of playing defensive line, but I definitely want to talk about the blockers first. Set it up for the pass rushers. They're the showstoppers. They're
They
The
do
prima
get a lot
donnas
more.
of the linemen, if you would.
They're the receivers of the linebacker shoot. And what we're gonna do with these rankings is we're gonna presume that everyone is healthy, everything's good to go, everyone is a little nicked up. We're gonna presume anyone who's not out for the season will be healthy by kickoff time. Right now, we're still in like week 1 of the preseason, so if someone gets injured by the time this releases, this is before any of those things. So everyone that didn't play last year but isn't out again this year, we're presuming they're coming back 100%.
Yep.
So I'll go first. For me, the number 1 offensive line is still the Dallas Cowboys. You got Tyron Smith, a top 5 left tackle when his arm isn't being held up by a knee brace. Travis Frederick, who when he's 100% and isn't unfortunately unhealthy like he was last year, an unfortunate thing, he's the best center in football. Zach Martin's, if not the best guard in football, he's a close number 2. Lel Collins is a big boy, and that 4th spot is very miscellaneous because they're usually just going to be used to double team and help anyway. So, I mean, you have 4 out of 5 linemen that'll start on literally every single team. Probably at their position, too. They won't even have to move around. So,
And it should tell you something when you look at that line, and the only thing that stops it is a autoimmune disorder for Travis Frederick from, like, literally being the... Like, it literally takes an act of God, essentially, to stop that line from being the top line in the NFL.
yeah.
Like, that's just crazy to think about.
And what's weird is Tyron Smith had a quote-unquote a down year last year and still didn't really give up hardly any sacks, was still a mauling force. He just had injuries that made one of his arms basically
Useless.
stiff. Yeah. And even then, he was still mauling people. A few more false starts or holdings here than we're used to, but it's bound to happen. I mean, no one's perfect.
No, exactly. And you got Connor Williams developing as that 5th overall lineman. I mean, he's not great by any means. If you're looking at like a Madden ranking for him, you're like, okay, well, that's obviously the weak link, but...
And unfortunately, I don't even know how the coaching staff feels about it because they took him out of the lineup, moved him around a lot too. So hopefully that hasn't messed with his confidence too much. But I think he's a really good talent on paper, at least, to be that 5th guy.
Definitely. I do think it's hard to vote against the Cowboys at number 1. So I'll let you keep going, though.
Did you have the Cowboys at 1 too?
Yeah, I do. I can't. I mean, I'm biased, but even putting my bias aside, it's hard to not give them the number 1 spot. It's just...
And when you've basically been the leaders, the convoy, if you will, for the NFL's top rusher 2 out of the last 3 years, and arguably could have been 3 out of the last 3 years. It definitely shows something. I mean, Zeke's a special running back, but it helps when he's running through semi-sized holes, and Dak is able to even put up some production throwing to guys that, when he's not the best passer and he doesn't have the best weapons, but when you have that much time, anyone will get open.
Yeah, and I mean, they did it with Alfred Morris running the ball behind him too. So it's not like it's just Zeke. It's not a Zeke effect. It is 100% that line. I mean, if you look at it, it's kind of like the NFL's equivalent to what the Warriors did. Building through the draft with 3 key components and 3 key positions. I mean, left tackle, center, guard, you're good.
Realistically, yeah, because a lot of teams are starting to build more from the interior than outerior. It used to be secure your tackles and then work your way in. A lot of teams are working the 2 guards in the center so the quarterback can step up into the pocket and the tackles can run them outside. The Cowboys got that. They got your left tackle. That side's safe. Yeah. Your right tackle, actually really good. But if that's a little iffy, you step up to Zach Martin and Travis Frederick. Oh, you're safe. Suddenly you're in a bubble of safety all of a sudden. Yeah. So they basically built it across the line in a really unique way that I think the rest of the NFL has been trying to copy. And I think they're still out in front. And this is still pretty much the same unit that did it with Tony Romo and DeMarco Murray too. So it just shows they've done it over 2 different quote-unquote generations of backfield. And I don't want to say 2 different eras because it was like maybe 3 years apart, 4 years apart. But still, they've done it with 2 completely different sets of skill positions.
Yeah, for sure.
So number 2, this one's debatable, I guess, but because no one on this offensive line is a quote-unquote Tyron Smith or anything like that, but they are greater than the sum of their parts, and they're underrated or overrated at all times. It's the weirdest thing. But the Steelers' offensive line.
The Steelers. God.
Villanueva's a very underrated left tackle. He's a very good pass protector. Struggles a little bit with the run because he's too gosh darn big. It's hard for him to get leverage underneath people when you're 6'10" or whatever he is. Then they got Pouncey. I don't even know all the players on their offensive line, but when you look, I think Pro Football Focus rated them in the top 2. Ben has immaculate amounts of time to sit there and throw the ball downfield. And even when he doesn't, he can break the one guy that kind of gets through after 5 seconds. They were one of those weird ones. They're very well coached, and they're almost like all brothers that just work together to hate Le'Veon Bell based off of last year.
Yeah, no doubt. The Steelers are you said it perfectly. They're the greater sum than their parts. Like their whole is just so much better than their parts. And Villanueva is probably the superstar on that team, and then he's maybe the 6th best tackle in the league. So he's not even like a top tier guy, like a top 5 guy like Tyron Smith we talked about with the Cowboys, but between him, Pouncey in the center, and they just rally around each other, and it is literally a still wall, if you will, in Pittsburgh.
I guess I will say I can't believe I overlooked him just because he's so good. You never hear about him. David DeCastro is one of the best guards in the league, and he's kind of your run mauler that lets James Conner, whoever's handling the ball, there's like, oh, follow that guy, that'll work.
Yeah.
And he's a really good pass protector too. I mean, he protected at Stanford for Andrew Luck and those guys back at Stanford. He's a quality top 5 guard. Villanueva's probably the top 6 tackle. Pouncey's a top 7-ish center. He's really good. Like they're pretty much loaded in the most unloaded way possible. Like they all click perfectly. Like we talked about Madden earlier, how they have scheme fits and stuff. These guys all scheme fit perfectly at 100%. Plus they're really good on paper too. So I got the Steelers at number 2. Who do you have at number 2?
Number 2 for me, I actually I have the Saints ahead of them.
Intriguing.
It's hard to look at that Saints offense and not see Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara making all these big plays, but they don't make these big plays without the linemen in New Orleans. Now, none of them are great. It's just kind of like the same thing with the Steelers. None of them are great by any means. I can't think of a standout guy on their offensive line.
Their tackles are probably one of the better 2 tackle tandems in the league with Teron Armstead and Mike Ramczyk, or Ryan Ramczyk, I think is how you say his name.
Ramczyk.
Like, they probably have the best tackle duo in the league when we think about it, but kind of what you mean, it took me a minute to even think of them. Like, that's a really good lockdown, pass protecting especially.
And they have to pass block for Drew Brees, who is one of the most prolific quarterbacks in our history of the NFL.
So you know darn well if he gets sacked, it's probably your fault. So that's got to have a little chip on the lineman's shoulder too. Like it's kind of like when Tom Brady gets sacked, everyone blames the offensive line, no matter what the situation is.
Exactly, and then on top of that, they can run block for Alvin Kamara, like it's no big deal. The transition between run block and pass block for them is so fluid that it's hard to look at and not just be in awe, because you're like, as a former offensive lineman, you look at it like, all right, I'm going to be mostly pass blocking this drive. Okay, cool. So you're not as aggressive. You're sitting back and waiting for somebody. And then the moment you start run blocking, you have to be that monster of a man. You mentioned DeCastro just a second ago. You have to somehow be that guy after being a pretty relaxed, chill, like, okay, I'm just not going to let you buy me pass blocker.
You go from a wall to a bulldozer, basically.
Yeah, and to do that effectively at such a high level of what they're doing, it's hard to not give them a 2 spot. Like, it's hard to put them in front of the Steelers, but if there's a team in front of the Steelers, in my opinion, I do think it's the Saints offensive line at 2.
I will say one of their weaknesses is why I don't have them as high as you do is they're really good at run blocking, pass blocking. I think they're really good at zone run blocking. Like they find their spot, they block the running back Alvin Kamara, even Mark Ingram and whoever's back there will find a hole. They're not as much of a power offensive line necessarily. Like they don't maul people as much. So that's why I don't quite have them quite as high, because we kind of saw what the Cowboys did to them a little bit too. They kind of overwhelmed them with their physicality in that game. They struggled a little bit with the Rams just because the Rams front 7 is so physically gifted too. So at the same token, obviously I'm splitting hairs here because that's what you kind of do at the top. And the Saints, I had them miss the top 5. I had them at 6. That's basically the only reasons, because that was the one quote-unquote weakness, even though I'm staring at a hair right now to try and find that. But, so
it is definitely tough to find a weakness in that offense. But you're right. I mean, in a goal line situation, they're probably not my go-to offensive line. But then again, outside of the Cowboys' offensive line, I don't really have a go-to in the goal line offensive line that I'd want to pick. So, it is definitely splitting hairs at the top. But outside of the Cowboys, I feel like this is the second closest to being a top level, both passing and running blocking team. So
cool. So who do you have at number 3 now?
Number 3, I have the Steelers. So
fitting.
The same exact reasons you said. The reason I don't put them up there is just, they're really good run blocking, but I do think their pass blocking sometimes is the issue. Pouncey, as a pass blocker, he's not as solid of a pass blocker. I feel like he's the weak link in their offensive line pass blocking. And if there's a rush, usually it's the reason why Ben's able to get out of it is because he's staring at the guy coming straight up the middle at him. So
when you hold the ball for 10 minutes in the pocket and stare straight ahead, that's true. But I know what you're getting at.
And unlike the Saints offensive line, they have a big guy back there who can, Big Ben is not going to get taken down by one normal sized corner normally, unless he chooses to go down.
Basically, or unless they hit him in the back and they knock the ball out necessarily. But
so they definitely have a little bit of luxury back there.
For better and for worse, because sometimes he'll sit there like, oh, this guy can't tackle me. He can't tackle me. Oh, man, he's tackling me. I should have hit Juju on that drag instead of waiting for AB to run 80 yards. Darn.
Exactly. And as a center, you probably don't want to be sitting there trying to block somebody for 10 minutes.
No, he's probably the worst quarterback to block for a while, also being one of the best at the same time.
Next to Russell Wilson, I totally agree with that.
Touche.
But, no, yeah, I definitely have the Steelers there. But that's probably my only gripe is in the center pass blocking-wise is just where I have – and, again, it's splitting hairs. We're talking – it could literally be 2A and 2B between these two. But that's just my thought on number 3.
Number 3 for me is a more Steelers version of the Steelers. With what we say is greater than the sum of their parts, the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
They were a top 5 by Pro Football Focus. They spent September letting Tom Brady get hit and kind of working out the chinks. Like, they're always 2-2, 1-3, or whatever it is. Then suddenly they're unbeatable. Yeah. Tom Brady doesn't get hit. James White, Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, Jonas Gray, whoever you want to throw back there, Rex Burkhead, I mean, heck, throw me back there. I'll give you 5 yards of carry.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always room to run, and it's purely coaching because you have Nate Solder, considered one of the top 5 left tackles, goes to free agency. Oh, we'll be fine without him. He kind of sucks with the Giants, or isn't what he was paid for. Trent Brown, that giant monster of a human being they had at right tackle. Oh, let him go to the Raiders for a record amount of money. They haven't missed a beat. I mean, they have some young talent like Hernandez, a kid they drafted. No, sorry, not Hernandez. Isaiah Wynn they drafted a couple of years ago. He didn't play last year. Also, he's coming back too. And you got Tom Brady, who speed reads. He knows everything. He knows the entire field. You'll trick him once a game if you're lucky. So I think they just have the best cohesive offensive line. Like you sew them all together, and you have 7 different colors of stitching, and it looks like they're all ugly, puke green, brown, orange. You get like just ugly colors, like an ugly orange, not the cool looking orange, but like the orange that comes out of puke, basically. Then you sew them all together, and suddenly it's a beautiful piece of artwork. It's the most interesting way. Just the biggest proof that NFL coaching matters big time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you're definitely not wrong. I do think the Patriots are really good. For me, they're kind of like how you have the Saints. They're good. They're just outside of the top 5 for me.
They don't do anything great, but they do everything super well. Like, they're 8 out of 10 across the board. They just don't have any 9 or 10s, where the other teams have 10s, but then they have some 5s or 6s, basically.
And, yeah, to me, it is more of a question of if they had a regular quarterback not named Tom Brady, do they still do the same? Because Tom Brady, he literally holds the ball for maybe a beat. Like, it's long enough to get his 3-step drop in, and the ball is usually out of his hand somewhere.
I will say Jimmy Garoppolo didn't get hit a whole lot either, but he's very similar to Brady with his stupid fast release and stuff like that. So Jacoby Brissett had a little bit of success for the game he had there. I look at the run blocking too. Like, anybody eats back there. Like, oh, Sony Michel's gone. Oh no, James White's not in. Oh no, Rex Burkhead's not in.
Then Jarvis Green Ellis
you
recently.
Guy up there in the 3rd row, come on down. We got you. It's so. Cordero Patterson played running back for them. It was effective. I can't believe I almost forgot that monster of a human who's kind of disappointed as a receiver. But I mean, James Devlin at fullback can get some burn. Aaron Hernandez played a little bit. Like, theirs is almost up there exclusively because of coaching, honestly, because they pick guys that are pretty decent, smart guys. Like, all right, just put you here and you'll be fine. Yeah. Like, obviously, like we saw in the Super Bowl, there's a little penetration from the stupidly talented Rams. But in the end, AD didn't really wreck the game. Ndamukong Suh didn't wreck the game. Samson Ebukam didn't wreck the game. No.
Yeah, they didn't have a Rams type game against them. They were able to bend but not break. Is kind of that offensive line, and you're right though that their run blocking is outstanding. And just for me, I'm just looking at it like this is one of those cases where having a Hall of Fame quarterback, in my eyes, kind of hurts him because whereas Drew Brees will scan the field, Tom Brady, he knows where he's going. It's like Michael Jordan in the 4th quarter. He already knows where he's going.
He's throwing the ball to the flats to James White or a 2-yard pass to Julian Edelman. You don't need 2 or 3 seconds to throw the ball 10 feet. I mean, he's not going to really throw it downfield. If he does, it's just throwing it straight into the sky and Gronkowski plucks it. So, I mean, Brady does have a luxury there of not having to worry about scanning the field because he already knows he's throwing it laterally.
Yeah, exactly. And it's to your point, though. It's 100% great coaching. I mean,
100%.
You look at that offensive line, that is really good, but again, in my eyes, not a top 5, but I can see why you put them in the top 5. They are definitely
I initially didn't have them until we started kind of thinking about it. I looked at their playoff run. Against the Chargers, they mauled the Chargers' offensive line. Tom Brady didn't even get dust on his uniform. Like, the only thing that got on his uniform was his own sweat. Why would he be sweating? Bosa, Ingram, they were completely nullified. Yeah. Derwin James, if they wanted to blitz him, useless. Like, they ripped the Chargers' defense apart. Against the Chiefs, they whooped the Chiefs' front seven's butt for 99% of the game, minus the one time D Ford cracked Tom Brady for that interception that didn't count. And technically, D Ford was offsides.
Yeah.
And other than that, I don't remember a whole lot of times Brady getting mauled. I mean, gets hit here and there just because his reads covering, he has to hold the ball. But Chris Jones, he didn't wreck the game. D4 didn't wreck the game. Justin Houston, which, by the way, that Chiefs defense, all-time bad. But that pass rush last year, looking back on it.
All-time good.
Yeah, I mean, they either got a sack or gave up a touchdown. And, well, when you win 12 games, you get a whole lot of sacks. So
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll say, and then in the Super Bowl, we talked about it. So I think when it matters, that offensive line elevates it, rises to the occasion, unlike any other. It's like Buster Douglas rising to the occasion to beat Mike Tyson.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously, on paper, not that great, but they do it when it counts. So I put them up there exclusively for that.
On the field, they definitely show out on the field. I definitely get it. So
I'm not picking them in Madden by any means. But
No, not
unless
at all.
I get Tom Brady with them. All right, so
Exactly.
who do you have at number 4 as we start rounding this out?
So number 4, I actually have your guys, the Colts. Yeah, so it looks like with Braden Smith growing and Quentin Nelson just continuing to be the monster of the man that he is.
Biggest back ever assembled by a human being, my goodness.
Yeah, no, they are. I think those two linemen are just young up-and-comers to go along with Costanzo, and then is it Glowinski is the left guard still?
Mark Lewinsky, yeah.
The most disappointing, really good left guard to ever play for the Colts. Like in the history of the league, I think we were complaining about him every time we watch a Colts game.
Like he's really good, but he's playing on the right side where Quentin Nelson and Anthony Costanzo are on the left, and Braden Smith's to his right, and Ryan Kelly's his center, and he's just like, well, I'm really good in a starter quality guard, but these guys, gosh dang it, these guys.
Yeah. It's like he's like the weakest link of a really good line. Like
he's the Connor Williams of that line.
Yeah. It's just, and he's not even that bad. Like he was still ranked in the top 10 in guards last year. Like
he's really good. He's just not really great. And if somebody gets through, it's unfortunately usually his guy. And sometimes he likes to protect him, so he's the guy. The old school offensive line is like, if you get beat, hold them so your guy doesn't get hit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you have like usually Andrew Luck or a quarter who's like Ben Roethlisberger, he's gonna break away and make a play or something like that more often than not. And obviously, you don't want Andrew Luck hit, especially all the hits he's taken. It's clearly added up. So obviously, I think Luck's okay with it, and he was the least sacked quarterback in the league last year. So Glowinski's obviously doing something right.
Exactly.
I didn't have the Colts at 4. I actually have the Eagles at 4.
Okay.
Because for a lot of the same reasons, like Jason Peters, even though he's pretty much on his final leg, Hall of Fame left tackle. Brandon Brooks, probably the third best guard in the league behind big boy Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce, if not for Travis Frederick, I think would be the best center in the league. And then you got Lane Johnson, the best right tackle in the game.
He could play tight end if he wants to.
He could play quarterback if he wants to.
He can do anything. Honestly, I feel like out of a lineman in recent history, he's probably the most athletic lineman I think I've seen recently.
Really, weirdly enough,
offensive lineman, I think.
I just consider them like Cowboys East, even though they're both in the NFC East. The Cowboys are in freaking Dallas. They're not on the east part of the coast.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're in the NFC East, but that's another topic.
Yeah, we'll get to that one later on.
Like that, just the Eagles could
conference realignment. That's all.
You put any quarterback you want back there. Carson Wentz is MVP candidate. Oh no, he goes down. Let's win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz comes back, isn't quite himself, but they're still pretty good. Oh man, he gets hurt again. Hey, Nick Foles, and suddenly we beat the Bears at Chicago in the playoffs. Oh no, we don't have our old running backs. Let's get Jay Ajayi. Oh, we're not feeling him anymore. Hey, Darren Sproles, Corey Clement. Anyone eats with them too. They're
Josh Adams. I mean, like you name it. Yeah, I don't get it. They're on my list, but I have them at 5. But I love the Eagles, and I hate the Eagles. And as a Cowboys fan, I hate the Eagles, so it hurts me to say it. But you're right.
If I was building a team, I want basically to just pick from them. Like if I was building a team, I'd like to think it would look a lot like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they really do have the same formula as what the Cowboys did. You know, you got your center, you got your guard, you got your tackles, and you can't really complain with any of them. You're like, all right, I would take Travis Frederick or Jason Kelce. You know, I'm cool with either one of them. Don't get me wrong, Jason Kelce's getting a little older, so maybe I still stick with Travis Frederick, but like bias again.
You can't go wrong. I think Kelce's a little bit better pass blocking. Maybe Frederick's a little bit better with that downhill running, like splitting hairs. Same with Tyron Smith's probably a little bit better running, where Peters I like passing. It's splitting hairs there.
Yeah.
I just think they're vastly underrated because the Eagles have so many unique and fun ways to score with Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, like a lot of big names. Doug Peterson became the talk of the town with his Fearless book and everything. They overlooked the fundamental reason they won all those games is no one's hitting anybody.
Yeah.
They're killing everybody, and there is nothing getting near whoever the quarterback or running back is. I mean, LeGarrette Blount rumbled and bumbled and stumbled throughout that Super Bowl. And
I have a different different opinion on LeGarrette Blount. That dude somehow manages to make mincemeat out of everybody, no matter where he plays. I don't get it, but
And weirdly enough, he plays for the Patriots, and the Eagles' offensive line is pretty
Yeah.
darn good lines that they get him going to where he's on a second level, where he's on a linebacker or a safety who's like, oh, goodness gracious, here comes a big man.
yeah, I got to tackle that lineman? You're kidding me, right? Oh, God.
Great. Oh, great. I get to play against Adrian Peterson in elementary school. I thought this was flag football, but I was wrong.
William Hayes at running back, in my opinion.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
And then at number 5, I have the Colts. Pretty much the same reason you have them. The questions I have with them is, Mark Lewinsky is really, really good. I want to see if he takes that next step to get a little bit better because he's a young guy. They're all really young, minus Costanzo. Costanzo is really good if you give him a chip guy, no one's going to get by there. But if you don't chip with him, he gets beat around the edge sometimes. He's weirdly slow for an athletic guy. He's weirdly slow getting to his spot.
Yeah.
I remember watching that Eagles game, basically in the 4th down and 3rd downs, he got smoked around the edge a lot. Quentin Nelson, best guard in football, in my opinion. You could take Brooks or Zach Martin, whoever you want. Quentin Nelson, in my opinion, is the best. He does everything. Braden Smith, he was a really good guard, which is what they wanted for. Injuries and just overall incompetence moved him to right tackle. He's developed into a really good right tackle, one of the better ones in the league. Ryan Kelly, when he plays, I think he's given up 1 sack in his 3 years. He misses too many games is the only problem. But we're presuming they're all healthy. I have them at 5, but they have the highest trajectory. Like, if we're looking at stock spikes, they're the one that has the most potential to spike and give you a max reward. The other ones, they're already so high up, there's only so much higher they can go for the most part. So I think the Colts they're the potential team that's already peaking early. Like, they were rebuilding last year and they won 10 games and won a playoff game.
Exactly.
Which goes for their offensive line too. Like,
and they came up against a juggernaut in the Chiefs. Otherwise, they probably advanced further in the playoffs.
And honestly, you look at a few mistakes with Adam Vinatieri, the best kicker of all time, arguably missed a couple cheap shot field goals, and that touchdown to Darius Fountain that bounced off his hands. That's like 17 points. I mean, the Colts were losing that game, but it's a lot closer. They kept Patty Mahomes out of the end zone. No one's done that all year.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about.
So it's wild. They make plays. That offensive line didn't look too good. I mean, some of those Jones, Ford, Houston, like they pressured a little bit. Some hands to the face in there. Like they kind of rattled that. They rattled that Colts offensive line a little bit. And it being cold, they bit off. They were a little far ahead. Like they were reading a prompter, and then they suddenly were like 3 sentences too far from where they were reading. Like their eyes looked too far ahead, basically.
Oh yeah.
So like I like the Colts. Like you have them at 4, I have them at 5. They're a really good offensive line. They're going to be fine for years to come. They've re-signed pretty much everybody. I mean, they're good. They're set.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. You know, that is probably a really good point with Costanzo. He does get beat around the edge, and he does need that help. He just horizontally moving, he's not that great.
I think the speed guys, when he faces the power rushers, he can hold his own a little bit better. Like when it was Fletcher Cox on him, Fletcher didn't necessarily. Obviously, Fletcher's going to be a problem, but he didn't kill him. It was guys blaring around the edge, like what D Ford would do, stuff like that. Yeah. Just guys with speed he struggles with a little bit, which unfortunately nowadays everybody has speed. So we'll see week 1. They got Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa coming into town. So with him and Braden Smith, whoever's playing quarterback, whether it's Brissett, it's a dinged up luck, it's a 100% luck, whether they decide to run Marlon Mack 50 times or drop back 40 times, we're going to find out how good this offensive line is week 1 for sure. We're going to see if they've taken the next step, or we're going to find out. It's going to be... I'm excited. Week 1's so close. I can't wait for the NFL season.
That sophomore slump, whether it comes into play or not this season with guys like Braden or Quentin, it's going to be the question mark.
And they're facing something they didn't face at all last year, and that's expectations. I mean, a lot of teams consider them the dark horse thing, which I'm worried about them for a team like that because they bit off a little more they could chew last year. It's natural to take a step down before you trajectory up, and then luck being injured, you never know with them. But anyway, we'll get back on topic now because we'll do some more team previews and record previews coming up as we get closer to the season. Naturally, we did top 5 offensive lines. We have to do top 5 pass rushers.
Yep.
And because of how weird NFL defenses are with positionless basketball playing football at this point, we're just going to go top 5 guys whose job it is to hit the quarterback. Their primary job is they go after the quarterback at least 50 plus 60% of the time. Like Darius Leonard goes after the quarterback a lot. You'll see Leighton Vander Esch sometimes blitzes just create havoc. Like they're not really pass rushers though.
No,
so
they're field generals.
We're directing this exclusively to guys that go after the quarterback. So I'm going to let you go first. Who do you have at the very top of the list?
Number 1 pass rusher is that man, that monster, now a former Oakland guy, now in Chicago, Khalil Mack. I think the dumbest trade to ever happen was him going from the Raiders to the Bears.
unless Abram or Josh Jacobs turn into superstars of their own caliber, but we'll see about that. I mean, you need to have drafted Earl Thomas and Ezekiel Elliott with those picks, basically, for it to be okay.
Exactly. I mean, this dude is, barring an injury last year, he's Defensive Player of the Year.
Honestly, those first 5 weeks of the NFL season, the best defensive football we've probably seen in a while. Honestly, just such a stretch because he was scoring, he was taking the ball away, he was disruptive. When he wasn't getting a sack, he was getting a sack.
Yeah, I mean, it was video game numbers. Like, you don't have that many hurries, that many you don't affect that many passes unless you're playing a video game. Like, you're straight up, like, coming off the edge and just dominating every single lineman week after week after week. And it wasn't like he was going up against chumps every week. It was like, he was the real deal last year. And you know.
Look what he did to that Bears defense. That was top 15-ish the year before. The one thing they're missing with a pass rush was a pass rush. Now they're the best defense in football because you got the best guy hitting the quarterback in the league. Like, I agree with you. I had him at 1. He can do it all. Plus, when you triple team him, that leaves other guys wide. Like, he has a weird effect of when you triple team him, he's still effective. And he could kind of drop back if you need him to. Like, he's very versatile. If I have to start a team and I got to pick a defense player first, it's probably him or, like, maybe Jalen Ramsey or something like that. Yeah. Like, it all depends. Like, I'm still probably taking Khalil Mack. I'd rather take a guy that does everything, and you can't just avoid because you can move him all over the field. He could probably play defensive tackle if you wanted to.
Oh, we have a Madden league, and we saw what I did in the first pick. All the offensive guys are gone, and who do I take? Khalil. He's arguably the defensive player of the year already in our league, and
you can't go wrong with Khalil Mack. Like, he's a stud. I agree with you. I had him at number 1. There's not a whole lot to say except John Gruden. You should have paid that guy. I know it's hard.
Pay the man.
I know you don't want to put all your money into him and Derek Carr, but pay the man.
You saw. To me, I look at John Gruden. I'm like, you saw what you did when you had Warren Sapp,
and
a dominant pass rusher. Like, why did you let a dominant pass rusher go?
I mean, granted, he does have more first-round picks next year from that trade, so maybe he hits. And if you can, maybe they do like what the Patriots do. We don't know because we haven't seen John Gruden draft in a while. So if you can get like 6 B players from these trades, as opposed to 2 B+ to B+ in Amari Cooper's case, to A- to an A++, we'll see. But I mean, considering how he transformed the Bears, it looks like the Bears have won so far because they definitely did not lose, giving up first-round picks for what will not be Khalil Mack.
Yeah, exactly, and that is a good point. I mean, John Gruden's in it for the 10-year range, whereas Khalil's in it for the 5-year contract.
Khalil's in it for I'm going to get mine because I'm the best defensive player in football, arguably, and was defensive player of the year a couple years ago and hasn't really stepped off the gas since. I mean, the one game he didn't look like Khalil Mack was against, ironically, the Patriots, and if I'm not mistaken, he didn't even play in that game. Let me rephrase that. That was the one time the Bears defense didn't look like the Bears defense.
Yeah.
And I think it's either because, A, that Patriots offensive line neutralized him, or B, because Khalil wasn't playing. I can't really remember if that was a game he
was in and out of the lineup. It was kind of the meh.
And you saw what he did week 1 to Aaron Rodgers, and that was coming off of a holdout. You saw what he...
that offensive line for Green Bay by no means was great last year, but it wasn't like all-time bad.
They were probably in the lower end of like a 10 to 13-ish area if we went that deep. And then what he did to Russell Wilson in week 2, like, he's a force of nature. And then once he got healthy again, he picked it up at the end of the year. Khalil Mack, best defensive player in the league, in my opinion. Best pass rusher. Moving forward.
Agreed.
Number 2, I have the reigning defensive player of the year, Aaron Donald. Not a whole lot can be said about him. Best guy rushing up the middle we've probably ever seen.
Yeah.
Best first step probably we've ever seen from a guy who puts 3 hands on the ground, who puts 3 limbs on the ground.
Yeah, at least 3 limbs on the ground.
Yeah, if not a 4-point stance. He's probably the best speed rusher in the league, honestly, as far as just using his pure athletic ability. The one thing I don't really like about him is he's a little smaller, and he's not. If you get a big guy that can lock up with him, he doesn't quote unquote block shed quite as well as some of the bigger guys, which is splitting hairs. Like, he's a B+ at block shedding if you get engaged. I think he's better just beating people to the punch so fast, and then his hands are really quick, and he does that little jumping thing that should not work where he leaps into the air. But he's Aaron Donald. I don't even know what else to say. He had 20 sacks last year from a defensive tackle. The only reason I don't have number 1 is I think Khalil Mack affects the game just a little bit more by the slightest amount, and I think Aaron Donald, well, he gets a lot of the sacks. I think Khalil Mack also takes the ball away just a wee bit better.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say I disagree with Aaron Donald, because if you've listened to our previous episodes, I will rave about Aaron Donald time after time after time to almost the point of like a bromance level. Like, I love the guy,
about to disagree.
But with that said, I don't have him that high yet, and honestly don't know why. But I have Von Miller at 2. I just think what Von does from that stand-up position is equal if not more, influential for his team. Like the Broncos need him more than the Bears need Khalil Mack or the Rams need Aaron Donald to do what they do because they have no back end presence on the Broncos. Like
Besides Chris Harris.
Chris Harris is it. Like that's it. Like you and they're not throwing at Chris Harris. They're throwing at the other corner. Like so
the no-fly zone has turned into a pretty decent fly zone for the most part.
Exactly. So I feel like Von Miller, what he does is at pass rushing at such a high level is needed. So to me, that's a little bit more. If I'm ranking him, I'm gonna put him a little bit higher because he needs to continue his output. So he's the most likely week in and week out to carry the same numbers over. Whereas with Khalil, we did see a drop off on him.
What I will say,
but I still have him at number one. So it's like this is again like the offensive line. It's splitting hairs.
What I will say about Von Miller is he has one thing no one else on either one of our lists has is he won a Super Bowl with his exploits, and I will agree with you on he is fantastic. I have him a little bit lower simply because his dominance recently hasn't translated to wins quite as much. I know there's plenty of other issues on those teams.
Yeah, that Broncos team needs a lot to be fixed.
They're working on it right now, and he's fantastic. I do have him in my top 5 a little bit lower. We'll get to him. He's fantastic. I think he strips the ball better than a lot of other guys, too. He's got that tomahawk pretty well down. And I think his bull rush is pretty good, too, depending on the tackle. Like the bigger tackles, like Jason Peters or Lyle Collins, Tyron Smith, he can't really bull rush them quite as well. Yeah. Where Matt can bull rush a damn wall and be just fine. AD will somehow jump through a wall. I don't know how.
I don't get how he.
I think Von Miller can be slowed down just a little bit by the really big guys if he doesn't beat them to the edge.
Yeah, he's currently now he's got that issue where now teams are keyed in and double teaming, triple teaming him, chipping him, and then double teaming him or chipping him and then double teaming him with a running back there to help. Still so he does have a lot more eyes on him now. But I do think that tomahawk, that strip sack, I mean, it's a thing because of Von Miller's exploits for so many years. Like
him, Dwight Freeney, guys that just mastered that for years. Reggie White even was really good at it.
And he's probably the best in the game still at it. It's hard to not put that in part of the consideration because if he does touch your quarterback, it's a 50-50 chance that ball's coming out. It's not. You can't guarantee anything once Von Miller touches your quarterback. He's either taking the ball away or that quarterback's going to regret you holding on to the ball.
One thing I like about him is I won't say he's consistent. Like, obviously, all these guys are consistent, but I think guys like Mack and Donald and stuff, some of the other guys talk about, when they get into a zone, it's like, well, here they go. Here's a 3-sack game come. Where Von's basically more of I'll get you a sack a game, maybe 2. He's not really a 3 to 5 sack explosion guy. No. He's just kind of consistent with it. He's always going to give you. It's like the old joke they used to make about Trent Richardson. If you need 2 yards, I'll give you 2 yards. If you need 3 yards, I'll give you 2 yards.
Yeah.
Where Von, it's like, if you need 5 sacks, he'll give you 3 sacks. If you need 2 sacks, he'll give you 3 sacks. Which, in this case, is not a bad thing. Like, I'm not comparing him to Trent Richardson by any means. Just a similar adage on an opposite end of the spectrum.
No, you're exactly right. He does exactly what is needed of him week in and week out.
And obviously, he does a little bit more. He just doesn't. Doesn't have as many explosion games, which ironically one was in a Super Bowl, so you can't obviously fault him. He's on my top 5 as well. 2 years ago, he's probably number 1, if not number 2, behind Khalil Mack. For me.
Absolutely.
I just think other guys have emerged while he's still been dominant. Like, he's still a quote-unquote 98, 99 overall guy. So I just have him. All right, so who do you have at number 3 then?
So number 3, I do have Aaron Donald. Like I said, I rave about him all the time. I do love his first step. I don't think it's something you can teach. That is so naturally gifted.
He's the worst guy to teach somebody how to play defensive lineman. He's the last guy you have him watch his tapes. Like, I just want to watch Aaron Donald tapes to be an NFL defensive tackle. No, you're not, sir. Go watch anybody else because you are not doing that.
If I were a coach and some kid came up to me and said, I want to be the next Aaron Donald, I'd probably be like, no, you can't be. And I mean that in the best ways possible. Not like I don't want to support your dreams. I mean like literally you can't do that. It's physically should be impossible, but he somehow breaks physics to do what he does. I mean, you joked about him somehow making it through a wall. I think he probably just breaks the space-time continuum, walks right through it. This, cells and everything just part ways. It's like the Red Sea. It's just I don't get how he does it.
If there's a quarterback on the other side, he'll find a way there. It doesn't matter.
It's like see ball, hit ball. He sees quarterback, he hits ball. That is exactly what Aaron Donald does, and it is shocking how he does it. It's crazy. I don't get it. I'm in awe watching him every time.
Nothing else needs to be said. We already kind of went over. We've gone over. So for me, number 3, if peeing your pants is cool, consider me Myles Garrett. I think he is an emerging defensive player of the year. Wasn't quite as dominant early as rookie season, being a number 1 overall pick, and he had a little bit of injury things here and there. He's a big human. He's a big boy. Like he doesn't have quite the natural gifts of Aaron Donald, for example, but he's fast off the line too. He is fast in the open field, and he is strong. Like, he's Aaron Donald with some girth to him, basically. Not quite as fast, but add 30 pounds and a few inches of height. I think he's going to be a defense player of the year at some point in this league. Maybe not next year, although I know some people on like NFL Network I've seen have said he's going to be, but I think this year he's going to give you 15 sacks because I think that offense is going to put up points, and he's going to get to just key in on pass rushing.
It's going to be a lot of pass rushing.
And he's got some good defensive players around him. Denzel Ward's an emerging superstar corner. That one guy opposite him, Owebananjo, I have no idea how to say his name, but he is really good as well. They got some young emerging pieces. That offense is going to put up points. I mean, I don't know if they're
just sets up for Myles Garrett to have monster years.
I think they're almost building like those early 2000 Colts where they didn't have a whole lot of defensive studs, but they had two guys on the edge that killed quarterbacks, and Peyton Manning gave you a lead. I think the Browns are kind of looking like that right now just in a more pass-happy league. They're like, all right, Odell, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Baker Mayfield. I think we'll score some points here. Pretty good offensive line nonetheless, too. All we got to do is keep it close, somehow get like a 20-10 lead, and unleash the Garrett.
Yeah.
So I think he's gonna take a big step. My guessing for him right now, assuming everything stays healthy and everything works out, 13.5 to 14 sacks, 4-ish forced fumbles. I think he's gonna score a touchdown somehow too. He's gonna have double-digit tackles for loss. He's gonna end up with about 50 total tackles, maybe even 60. I think this could be the year where if the Browns take that step, everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon and say they will. It's gonna be because of Baker Mayfield, obviously, and Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Odell's fun, but Odell's not gonna put them over the top quite like those two will.
I agree with everything you said, but you said it earlier, and it is agreeing with you. He is an emerging talent, and that to me is why I have him off my list. Is he's emerging. He's not there yet.
I think at the end of last year
he is there yet.
I think at the end of last year he jumped there, and I think it's only uphill. But not uphill, but like it's only up from here. But yeah. I get what you're saying. Like there's other guys. If you had to win a game tomorrow, you'd probably take before him.
Exactly. Yeah. No. But to the point of saying that is. Like we said, Aaron Donald is. If a kid came up to me and said, "I want to be the next Aaron Donald," I'd be like, "No." If a kid came up to me and said, "I want to be the next Myles Garrett," I'd be like, "Let's do it. Let's go." Like
my thing is, how much can you bench and how fast are you? So you got to be better than pretty much everyone else around you at that, but it's a lot more attainable than Aaron Donald.
Yeah, he is.
You got to run a 4.8 and be able to put up like 25 on the bench, which is more obtainable than Aaron Donald's 4.5 or whatever the hell he runs, while also being able to jump over a horse to kill a quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. No, I look at Myles Garrett and I do think he is a physical freak. Who can probably destroy me in a one-on-one battle.
No, there's no probably.
In less than 0.2 seconds. I mean, I think like he would literally look at me and be like, "Sorry, kid," slap me across the helmet. I'd be like, "In next week." Like I just don't get it.
And if anyone doesn't know, you're not exactly a small guy either.
No, so yeah, I'm the opposite of small. You might say, call me a lighthouse, if you will, of a human. Some call me Sasquatch. It is what it is. But no, he is honestly just a freak of nature. But to me, I just don't have him in the top 5 because he is emerging. I haven't seen it from him solidly for a year.
Basically, what you're saying is by week 8, you're going to be like, okay, he should be a top 5. Most likely is what you're thinking.
If we revisit this at the end of the season, he's going to be in my top 5 because I do agree with you. I do think he'll be like 13 to 15 sacks this season. And I do think if this Browns team is going to be what they're supposed to be, it will be Myles Garrett leading that defensive line and Denzel Ward on the backside making all the mistakes that the quarterback will make because he's getting pressured, he's getting rushed. And it's going to be Denzel Ward picking up a lot of notoriety at corner to be that superstar.
I do think Myles Garrett was a quote-unquote superstar pass rusher last year. It was just hard to tell because they had Tyrod Taylor and they were mediocre for those first games. Yeah. And you had a rookie quarterback who, as great as Baker was, he was a rookie quarterback still. So you weren't exactly put in positions to thrive like a lot of these other pass rushers were.
Exactly, but we saw him at the Minnesota Timberwolves game we went to, and
it's a big man.
Yeah, he's just sitting on the bench, and he is just way bigger than everybody else. And we looked across the court, and I mean we were not that far, but we were far away from where he was sitting courtside, and we both still recognized him immediately. Like it's like. That's Myles Garrett. The dude literally looks like you put like a square table on an upper body. Like that's him. Like he's
what we said about Quentin Nelson's back. That's like what Myles Garrett's front looks like. Basically,
prototypical what you'd want to build in the gym. That Dorito shape or whatever. Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, like I don't get it. It's just he's a monster of a man. So he is set to come out and he likes dinosaurs. So he's good in my book.
He's great. I can't wait to watch him. I can't wait. So number 4, I have another guy who's pretty much the opposite of Aaron Donald because he's massive and he's huge. And he's a guy that was in the opposite of Myles Garrett's situation because while Myles Garrett didn't have a lot to work with, this guy was playing from ahead the entire damn season. Chris Jones on the Chiefs, the defensive tackle. 6'6", 6'7", 320 pounds. Big, massive human, kind of like what we've been saying about Nelson and Garrett, but he's probably even bigger than they are. He's a little taller than...
He's a monster.
He's a defensive tackle type guy as well. He's like a 3-4 end, so he basically played the J.J. Watt position. Now he's moving to a 3 technique inside. He's going to be basically what Aaron Donald was before. He's huge. He's massive. He's got quick hands and surprisingly quick feet. I mean, he ran a pretty good 40 at the combine, too. He was sub-5 for over 300-pound guy. And you saw he had, I think it was 16 sacks last year, 15. He was in the top 5 as a defensive tackle. That defense gets a lot of heat. We talked about this earlier because they gave up so many points and yards, but him, D. Ford, and Justin Houston got a bunch of sacks. And in that playoff game against the Colts, Chris Jones was kind of giving it to Ryan, like the Quentin Nelson, I think Ryan Kelly as well. Like, he was just a force up the gut. Even when he doesn't get sacks, he does that hands to the face thing, too. He gets away with it a lot, too. Like, he pushes the helmet up.
Right underneath that chin and just lifts up.
Just kind of freezes the offensive lineman and gets by them. So, and he's really good against the run. I know we're talking about pass rushers, but he's a force against the run, too. Similar to these other guys, I think he might even be the best run defender I have on this list. Maybe Khalil Mack's better. I think Mack sets the edge better than anyone I've seen in a long time. But
nobody wants to run to that edge.
Not at all. And you don't want to run away from either. You want to just hope he takes the play off, which he doesn't. But anyway, Chris Jones, he's next to Aaron Donald. If Aaron Donald didn't exist, if this was a world where guys weren't broken like that, he'd be the best interior pass rusher in the league, in my opinion. He's a force of nature. I think he's going to get better, too. I mean, I think playing like in a 4-3 defensive tackle, he's not going to get double-teamed quite as often. You don't have, granted, he did have D. Ford and Justin Houston that took a little pressure off because he's the guy that kind of was like, oh, this guy came out of nowhere, and suddenly he has 15 sacks and is third in the league. Where now they're like, all right, start there, then get Frank Clark, and hopefully the other guys don't also get 30 sacks.
Yeah.
So he might not have as much production, but I think he'll be very disruptive this year. I think he's another one where if the Chiefs are going to come back and be as deadly, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes not regressing and Chris Jones getting pressure.
Yeah. I like the Chris Jones pick. He's not in my top 5. Honestly, I overlooked him, and it's easy to do because he was that third guy. If you look at the line as far as like
name notoriety, he's number 3, but then production-wise, it's like, oh, that's the guy doing it.
Yeah, and so, I did overlook him, so that's on me. I should have probably checked that out a little bit further. I have his teammate on my top, or former teammate on my top 5, but we'll get to him in a minute.
It's hard not to overlook him when that Chiefs defense was so historically bad as far as yards and points getting up. Like, on paper, they were terrible, but then when you watch the games, it's like, oh, they're not as bad as you think. They just give up, like, 3 50-yard plays, unfortunately.
I mean, it's easy to be a really bad defense when you have an offense as great as they were.
You're on the field for 60% of the game.
Exactly, yeah. You don't have time to rest. You don't also have to worry about it. Like, you're up by 6 touchdowns in the first quarter. You're just like, they can get 1. Oh, they can get 2. We're good. Patty's gonna keep throwing. Oh, wait, it's close in the 4th. All right, now we're gonna take the quarterback's head off. Like, but to me, I think you're right. Chris Jones is gonna be the reason if that defense recovers this year, he'll be the reason. But to me, I think he's too balanced, in my opinion, to be the top that top pass rushing threat. But
he's not as freaky as Aaron Donald or the other interior pass rushers. Which you're not wrong. I'm thinking if I'm building an offensive line, I was like, I don't want to have to block a guy that kills everybody in the middle. That's where my quarterback steps up. It's easier for him. And they stick their hands up and they kill the drags and the spot routes. So for me, I think he could be more disruptive than a lot of edge guys because he's so good at pass rushing up the gut. But I get what you're saying. Anyway, who do you have at number 4 then?
So for number 4 for me is, again, probably bias plays a little part of this. DeMarcus Lawrence.
You can't go wrong there. He's a rich man too. I mean,
hard to not pay. To talk about a man that just got paid as much as he did, and
rightfully so too. I mean, he played the year on the franchise tag and dominated. He's like, all right, you're gonna franchise me, but you ain't gonna do it again.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, he's gonna play himself into a contract, and he did.
Good on the Cowboys for not ruining that. There's some issues with Zeke, Dak, and everyone else they're talking about now. Amari, who can pay? They got one of them right at least.
At least their defense is going to be okay.
Even if you have Byron Jones, Leighton, and they have a lot of young guys they have to pay, but at least you kept, in my opinion, the best defensive one to keep.
Yeah, and to me, I look at DeMarcus Lawrence, and he's still young. He's still, 24, 25?
26, something like that. He's a young buck. He'll play through that contract and be pretty good, barring he pulls a Des Bryant or something.
Yeah, I mean, the dude's not going anywhere anytime soon. I don't see him dropping off dramatically. If anything, he might get better. We'll see. I don't know. But you have, behind him, you have Van Der Esch there growing. You have Jalen Smith.
Tackling machines.
Yeah, you got guys that will force anything into DeMarcus Lawrence on a run play. So rush-wise, he's got protection back there too. They're all really good coverage guys.
Minus Jeff Heath.
Yeah, minus Jeff Heath. But that's a different story. That guy's probably not even starting this year. So pray to the football gods. Jeff Heath doesn't start unless it's kicker, in which case go ahead. Not Dan Bailey. He needs to.
Let it go.
Anyways.
Let it go. Moving on to DeMarcus Lawrence. I agree with you. DeMarcus Lawrence is a freak of nature. Fantastic. A lot of things I said about Myles Garrett kind of similar to him, just maybe a little less naturally gifted freaky. He's probably better with his hands, better with his footwork, probably a little bit better reading it.
Yeah.
If we did a top 10 list, he's easily on the top 10 list. I kind of struggled with him, Chris Jones, and who I have at number 5. I was like, who do I want to put here? Who do I want to put here? The one thing with DeMarcus Lawrence, which I think is kind of interesting, is he lines up a lot at left end as opposed to right end, where a lot of teams put their best pass rusher at right end to hit the quarterback's blind side. With them, they're like, we're just going to put him on the right tackle, since usually right tackles aren't as good as pass blocking. Obviously some teams are bucking that trend, like the Eagles putting Lane Johnson at right. It just depends, but they're just like, screw it, even if he sees you coming, we'll hope you get there anyway. Which he does anyway. I mean, it's just kind of interesting. He doesn't always face the best left tackle necessarily, but at the same time, I don't really think it really matters. I think it's kind of positionless at the same time. He can obviously do both. I mean,
but you're right. His biggest success does come from that left end side that is right in the quarterback's face, and that's almost like, if you're the quarterback, what are you thinking when you're seeing this large man sprinting at you after leaving your tackle to smother himself on the ground? He's just running at you like he wants to kill you. What are you thinking?
Depends. If I'm Andrew Luck, Ben Roethlisberger, Russell Wilson, a mobile quarterback, or Luck and Roethlisberger is big quarterback, I'm thinking, all right, just get out of the way. This is kind of normal. Or in Ben's case, good, the play has started. Now that I'm about to get hit. If I'm Andrew Luck, I'm like, gosh, dang it, I hate this. Is just a story of my life. If I'm Russell Wilson, I'm like, okay, now I run backwards. If I'm any other quarterback necessarily, like a pocket pass or like a Drew Brees, I'm like, oh gosh, dang it, and then fall down.
Yeah, I'm doing the Eli Manning. I'm rolling into a ball and falling on the ground and just touch me. Don't hurt me, please.
I'm doing the Peyton Manning and just nope, falling on my face. Don't do it.
It must be a Manning brother thing. I've seen them both do it, and it's hilarious because they're barely getting touched.
And Tom did it a little bit too before his offensive lines took off. It's smart. If you're not a guy that can move, you get down so you don't end up like Cam or Luck or those guys that have been banged up.
Yeah, I look at it that him coming back to DeMarcus Lawrence coming from the left end. If he's coming at your face as a quarterback and he's still causing as much stat damage as what he's doing, his stats are next level. I mean, he is one of the best pass rushers in the league, and his stats back it up. And he's doing that from the front side, and that's what's crazy to me is you're staring at the guy the whole time. There's not very many lefties, so you're staring at this man running at your face, and he's still able to do it. So it just throws me for a loop. I don't know.
I think it does help that he's usually not always going against the best tackle, but like I said, we are splitting hairs. He's clearly a top 10 defensive end pass rusher in the league. Top 5, can't really argue it, honestly. He's fantastic.
No, yeah.
So, number 5, I'm going to go first on this one because we're revisiting a guy. I have Von Miller here. Everything we said before, the only reason is I think those other guys kind of ascended ahead of him just a little bit. He's still a 98, 99. The problem is I think he's on kind of a bad team, unfortunately, and I know Bradley Chubb emerged next to him, which is awesome. So I don't know. It's you can't put them all at number 1, basically. And unfortunately, I think Vaughn was pushed down a little bit. If you put Vaughn on my team, I'm winning games. That's just the thing. Mostly because I say I will rebuild better than John Elway did because he can't pick a quarterback to save his life.
John Elway's like Michael Jordan in the NFL. He was a great player, but rebuilding a franchise and finding talent, I question a lot.
I'll give him credit. He can build literally anything besides a quarterback. He found some good receivers. He's brought in some guys, Akeem Talib, Chris. He built really good everything except he can't find a quarterback. He had to have Peyton Manning bless him from the heavens, basically. But
yeah, that's true.
I mean, finding Julius Thomas, he's found some. Cortland Sutton looks really nice too. I mean, Noah Fant, that's a good first-round pick, I think, for that.
I don't know if John Elway had much to say about Noah Fant though.
Well, if we're gonna say it's his fault for everything else, then I'll give him credit for what he can do. I'll say weirdly enough, he's a quarterback that can't pick a quarterback unless Drew Lock. We'll see. I see him as Andy Dalton with a stronger arm, honestly, but we'll see.
Yeah, Michael Jordan can't pick the next GOAT to save his life either. So
he just can't pick a basketball player in general. But anyway, so I just have Von Miller there by default. Everything we have said, he's fantastic. You just can't leave him off the top 5. But at the same time, I can't put him at number 1 or there's not enough spaces. There's not 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1. I can't. So Von Miller, fantastic. Number 5. Number 5, you got kind of an interesting one here.
Yeah. So number 5, we talked about Chris being up there, and I don't think he's the best chief pass rusher. I got D Ford up there. I look at it as he was the guy that every team keyed in on every pass rush attempt. So that's the guy to me is the best pass rusher, the most influential pass rusher on his team.
I'll disagree. I think it was Justin Houston last year, but I mean, obviously, like I think
Yeah.
as the season went on, Justin Houston was still really good. They just kind of realized those other guys are producing too. But I think for most season teams were like, oh, Houston, the guy that had 22 sacks in 1 year, let's block him.
Yeah. And
But I know what you're getting
It let D Ford eat, but then even when he was being keyed in on, he still was able to get off it, and Chris Jones is, influencing plays. But I just think I don't know. I see a lot of what Von Miller does and what D Ford does, and I just think that in and of itself is kind of intriguing. But it's kind of the point I made with Myles Garrett for you. He is emerging, he is still growing, but I just at this point I look at him and I don't know. I also just kind of want to be different.
I will say one thing. He's in the top 10 for pass rushers based exclusively on the fact that he led the NFL in forced fumbles last year. He had 8.
Yeah.
I mean, the other guys are out there. Khalil Mack at 6, Justin Houston at 5. So obviously him and D Ford spent some time together. Obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, got other guys out there. Von Miller, Darius Leonard, who's not really a pass rusher. Aaron Donald had 4. So he led a really strong group. But the other number 2 and 3 are guys I want to talk about who are not on the list coming up in a second. When we talk about guys that missed it.
Yeah.
But when you lead the league in forced fumbles as a pass rusher, a lot of those are coming from hitting a quarterback or a tackle for loss type of thing. Very few of them are down the field punching the ball out like Darius Leonard.
Exactly. And he only played, really, for the Chiefs, he really only played passing downs.
Like, he wasn't really on the field unless it was a pass rush situation very often.
Which, to the detriment of being overlooked, is kind of the sad part about it. Because if you're not an every down lineman or, rusher, you kind of get overlooked a lot. So.
Which, with him being on the 49ers, that is one heck of a front seven they got going right now. You got Nick Bosa. If this injury doesn't turn out to be too bad, let's say he turns into Joey Bosa basically. We'll say you got DeForest Buckner, probably the next emerging defensive tackle superstar. You got Solomon Thomas, who's a top number 3 overall pick, who hasn't quite lived up to it yet, but he still can make plays. Now you got D Ford on top of that. I mean, that's a pretty good front seven you got going there.
John Lynch is doing something good in San Francisco.
Yeah, and then their offense is looking. So we'll talk more about San Francisco when it comes to season predictions. I got some words for them.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And now a couple of guys that are left off the list that I just kind of want to mention because they were second and third as far as forced fumbles. The Watts, JJ and TJ.
Yeah.
JJ's awesome, fantastic bounce back season. If it wasn't for Andrew Luck, he'd have been comeback player of the year. But I mean, it's hard to be better comeback player of the year than what the quarterback who was second in the NFL in touchdowns and led a decrepit franchise to the playoffs, honestly. And while JJ Watt's awesome, not taking anything away. He doesn't quite get after the quarterback like he did pre-injuries. Like he still gets sacks, but I think it's not quite as relentless as he used to be. Like it's just because he's usually more athletically gifted and stronger and probably better technician. Like 3 years ago or whatever it was before the injuries, when he was getting 20 sacks and he had this stupid motor from heck, he'd probably be number 1 just because you cannot block him.
Oh yeah.
He had a motor from heck, and he still tries. Like he still has a motor. I just think you can slow him down more over the course of a game. And then T.J. Watt, I don't know what to think. Like he's fantastic at going after the quarterback, but I feel like it's a little bit inflated, I guess I should say, because they were always playing with the lead with that Steelers team, and his sacks he had like 3 of them against the Browns in opening week or whatever it was. Like he's fantastic. He's going to be a Pro Bowler for years to come. He's awesome. I just don't know if I put him up that high yet. He's a guy that kind of like what we said about D Ford, only with passing downs. He's like early years D Ford. He'll get there, but right now I can't put him that high over guys like Khalil Mack and even D Ford or JJ. But JJ's in the top 10 clearly. I mean, he's probably like 7 for me if I had to rank top 10.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
His going after the quarterback's not what it used to be. Now he's simply Dikembe Mutombo trying to bat down drag routes at this point.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, obviously he's the 7th best pass rusher in the league. That's not bad by any means. I'm just simply saying he's not number 1 or 2, the freak of nature he was for so long.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right. I mean, I look at the Watts and I honestly look at their sack numbers and I almost think they're whoopsie sacks. Like, I think they luck themselves into sacks by just being stronger than the other person. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from them. I just think I look at TJ, different story. TJ's just becoming a full pass rusher now.
I mean, 13 sacks in your second year, 7 sacks in your, that's obviously really good.
Not terrible by any means. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, for JJ, I feel like JJ, his whole process is to engage with the lineman and then keep him at arm's length. He's there to knock down any passes, get picks. If he gets a sack, he gets a sack. Great. But his biggest, like the one thing that he does that affects the game so much are those deflections from hell. I don't know how he does it. I don't know his timing mechanism. But he is really good at it. He's the first person that really to make it become a stat that needed to be recorded.
He's the best ever, probably the best ever dude.
Yeah.
Other guys like Chris Jones and other big guys like that are starting to learn how to do it too. So.
Yeah, Fletcher Cox is another one, or Gerald McCoy down in Tampa. Like,
And they're not nearly as tall as those guys. They're just like, oh well, I'm ready here. I'll stick my
Yeah.
arms up. Where JJ's 6'5" and he could jump 80-inch vertical or whatever it is. He's
Yeah.
a freak of nature seeing him do those box jumps. So.
oh yeah, he's a monster.
So
And-
obviously we're not trashing JJ. We're saying
Yeah.
I look at these other guys. I'm like, all right, I'd probably pick these guys if I'm building a defense first. Which if you give me any of these guys, I'm going to smile and sign my soul away for my defense
Yeah.
really quick.
Like, would you like my firstborn child? Okay, here you go.
Whoa, not that far now.
Hey, look, at this point, they can have my dog if they. Well, maybe not.
All right, moving back onto the track now. But
But
JJ's
no, you-
fantastic. He's number 6, 7. He's
Yeah.
right there. He's honorable mention at this point. Like,
And then his teammate, JJ's teammate, Jadavian, the reason why I personally I didn't want to put him in my top 10 or top 5, let alone. Like, I don't look at him as a pass rusher. I look at him as a great run stopper, but
He's a
he
great
kind of
edge.
takes a pass.
he's a
Plays
great edge
off.
defender who gets sacks, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't really. Like, there's some games where he just kind of disappears and you're like, how?
Yeah.
But then there's other games where he's like, oh, there's the Jadavian Clowney that made a name for himself from killing a Michigan running back and then was a
Exactly.
first overall pick.
Yeah, he absolutely demolished a Michigan running back, sent him into Ann
The
Arbor.
shadow realm, basically.
Yeah,
like,
like-
and he's fantastic too. Like, he's a guy he wouldn't be my first overall pick if I was picking a defensive player, but he's a really good ancillary part. I mean, he's a good Scottie Pippen if I have Michael Jordan with me type of player.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, which is why I'm surprised him and JJ haven't resulted in a whole lot more. I mean, like, obviously they won the division last year and got to a playoff game, but they weren't really that dominant. Like, they had games where their defense showed up, but they didn't really force the issue on anyone. Like, they didn't intimidate anybody as much as
Yeah.
they should.
Between those two and Bernard McKinney behind him.
And then you got Whitney Merciless too.
Yeah, like I feel like those 4, there should be a lot more from that pass rush that's not there. Don't get me wrong, it's a great pass rush. It's just
It's not like the Chiefs pass rush or like the Eagles or like teams that as a unit they're like, oh, I don't want to block them. The Bears, like other ones where all their pieces play like it. For some reason, those guys, they almost trade games like, all right, I'll get 2 sacks. Okay, I'll get a sack. Like,
Yeah.
they don't all go after it. They don't like fight to get there, basically. It's like, oh, whatever happens.
exactly.
And I'm
yeah.
not questioning their heart or how they play. I'm just saying that's how the game looks. Like, they don't all dominate simultaneously and take over a game. They don't win games 21-0 because of that defense.
Which, to their own positivity, I mean, at least you don't have to worry about everybody being off on the same game.
Very rarely does that happen. I mean,
Yeah.
like maybe in that playoff game against the Colts, they weren't all on until the second half. They started clicking a little bit. That first half, they were all really, really off. I mean, they got picked apart.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen often. So that is a positive note to take away from that if you're a Texas fan. But if you're
If you're a
you
Texans
do,
fan,
you
you're
do
looking-
want more. You go away from the games. You're like, wow, that was cool.
Which is crazy to think when
But-
J.J. Watt has 16 sacks and 7 forced fumbles. It's just like there's a process how to get there. There's a difference between numbers and watching the game. And J.J. is a stud. He's going to be a stud next year. The Texans are going to be in the playoffs. I think they'll be a wild card team probably. Or do I? We'll talk about that later. But when you have Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt, you'll be okay. And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
J.J. Watt, he'll still be one of the best pass rushers for another 3 to 5 years or so, barring injuries, knock on wood.
Yeah,
I think
no
if you
doubt.
take away those injuries, he might even still be number 1 right now. I just think they took away a little of that extra something, that extra relentlessness he had where it's like, oh, that's a guy I don't mess with and I avoid him at all costs. I put 4 people on him and hope I just outrun the other guys or something.
He went from being able to run through a cinder block wall to he might make it through some cardboard.
He used to be able to crash that cinder block wall in a second, so, well, I'll knock it down in a few seconds. Like, just
let me
give
get my
it-
sledgehammer first. Like,
Exactly. Like,
know.
he's more blockable now than he was before, which still resulted in him top 5 in sacks. I mean,
yeah,
my
no,
goodness.
don't get me wrong. Like, we're not taking anything away from him. I just go away from watching J.J. Watt, just wanting that little bit more, like that extra zing, you know?
And now that we say that, he's going to come back and have like 20 sacks next year, which I'm all for because I love watching JJ work when he's going after the quarterback. So we'll see.
Exactly. I do. Yeah.
So we're going to move away from the gridiron. We're going to go to the court talking about rankings. There's not a whole lot going on in basketball right now, but one thing that stuck out to us is they ranked the all-decade team for the 2010s. Obviously,
Did they rank it, or did they just throw darts at a board? I don't really know.
We're going to get to some certain ones, but I'm going to just look at the first team, as you mentioned, LeBron, Steph, Harden, Kawhi, KD. Steph, obviously on there, multiple-time MVP, multiple-time champion. LeBron, it's LeBron James. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant, probably one of the best individual scorers we've ever seen. I mean, however you want to rank it, whatever. Like, Kevin Durant's clearly on there. James Harden, his stats are so stupid. It's hard not to keep him up there. It's just he's only done it for like 4 of the last 4 years, and they've been a dominant 4 years. It's hard to really argue and say he can't go there, but we'll see. He's movable. And Kawhi Leonard, I mean, That dude is a two-time Finals MVP this decade. One of them was averaging 17 points, and one was coming off a season he didn't even play the season before, really. Kawhi Leonard's the best player in basketball, in my opinion, right now. That's what I've been saying when he's playing. But you can't put him on that all-decade team right now because I'm looking at now 3 All-Star appearances, 18 points a game, 6 rebounds. Like, he's fantastic, but he hasn't been fantastic the whole decade.
Yeah.
So, like, that's where I look at the first team. Most of it's probably right. I can't really say take Kawhi off of it, but I think you can take Kawhi off of it, honestly, just because it hasn't been for a full decade. Like, if we're talking about the last 3 to 5 years, oh my God, it's Kawhi. It's Kawhi all the way. Like, this is the ultimate 2015 to 2020 first team.
Yeah, and to your point on that, I do feel like this whole list, they kind of forgot the 2010 to 2015 seasons even existed.
Minus LeBron and KD, those are the only guys from that.
And CP3, they have him. I feel like he's in the right spot on,
the second team because of what he did from like 2010 to 2016, 17ish area. Like, they ignored these last 3 years for him, which is good. I like him in that spot in the second team. Like, that's where he belongs, I think.
Yeah, I look at this first team and I'm just like, Kawhi. I mean, yeah, the last 3 to 5 years, okay, yeah, 100%. But let's be honest, 3 of those last 5 years are the most dominant. The other 2 years, he's growing into it.
I mean, I know you were defensive player of the year type of thing in that, best perimeter defender, but that's not first team. I mean, Bruce Bowen was a defensive player of the year type of player. I don't know if you ever really won one, but you know what I mean. Like, he was always right there. So I can't quite put Kawhi on the first team. Like, it's hard to argue when you look at just the last few years, but I think you got to move him down if you're going all decades team.
And I definitely think Brew agrees with that. That was that growl right there. I do think he agrees that Kawhi probably could get moved down a little bit, but
granted, going into the 2020s, he is the best player in basketball going into it. I will stand by that.
If this is the best team from the 2020s decade, he's number one, all decade first team.
Even if you just go 2015 forward, like 2015 forward, this first team's perfect, I think. But when you include those first 5 years, I think there could be some movement.
I definitely agree with that.
So we'll go to the second team real quick. We're looking at Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, Blake Griffin, Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
Blake Griffin and Carmelo Anthony are the exact opposite of what we said with the first team. They are getting on there from the first 5 to 6 years. Blake, obviously, the first 7 because he was a stud for most of the decade till these last couple of years. Yeah. Carmelo was great until 2015, would you say? 2014, he was still a stud scorer.
Yeah, basically that last year in New York and the first year in OKC.
Yeah, basically once he left New York, it was downhill from there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis came in 2012, so he missed a couple of years. It's hard to say he's not on the second team because he's been basically what Kawhi is now. He's been that from the front court the whole time. It's been injuries, so it's fine. Russell Westbrook won an MVP, multiple triple-doubles, went to a finals, okay. I mean, and then Chris Paul, we already talked about, a perfect spot, ultimate field general, nearly averaged a double-double.
Yep.
It's hard to really argue. I mean, like, I think Westbrook could be moved to the third team maybe. The thing is he was so good these last 6 years, and those in the beginning of the decade when they went to the finals, he was still pretty good too. I mean, he's a 20-6 type of guy early on. It's hard. There's not a whole lot for me to argue this one. Like, maybe you take Blake Griffin or Carmelo off, but they were really good in those early parts. It's hard to take them off for me.
To me, I think you can take Melo and you can move him down, just because he did. If the fall off was so fast for Melo that you can almost be like forgiven for missing the fact that he averaged 23 points per game.
The question is, the thing is, he averaged 28 and 29 like that one year. He was scoring title champion in the first 3 to 4 years.
But then again, that's on the flip side of that. We just talked about it with Kawhi. Like, do 2 to 3 years make a decade? Not really. So for me, I look at Carmelo and as a guy that is movable on this list. Do I think he's in the wrong spot? No, I do think he is a good enough player to be second team.
But I think there's other guys that deserve it ahead of him, which we're going to look at this third team, and this is where we look at it.
This third team is all messed up.
So I'm going to start from the bottom. Giannis, I'm not even trying to say his last name. Giannis, really, really good. The thing is, it was the last 2 years or 3 years. Like, last year MVP, fantastic. One of the best MVP seasons we've arguably seen in a while, in my opinion. Just the field goal percentage, the rebounds, the assists, the attacking the basket, the defense. Like, he could have been Defensive Player of the Year, arguably.
Oh, no doubt.
So he could be here, honestly, off of those 3 years. Like, he could be one that you do that, but it's the same thing. Like, I would take him off, honestly. Like, he's going to be the best player of the 2020s, probably.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
But putting him here is not a travesty. LaMarcus Aldridge, he's been the staple of consistency since he came in really early. I think he was like a 2010s, maybe even a little bit.
I think it was 08, 09,
yeah, so he's played the whole decade. He's been a pillar of consistency. He just hasn't been great. I mean, a 21-9 guy, really, really good. I mean, I guess you could put him there, but I would take him off, honestly, just because he's been really good, but he hasn't been as outstanding as other players. Because I'd be moving Melo down to here, possibly. Like,
I think he stays, personally.
I can't argue with him staying, but I think he's one
if he's off the list, I'm not sad about it by any means. Like, it's not one that's going to break my heart.
He's kind of the opposite of Giannis and Kawhi and Melo, where, like, those guys are so good for 3 to 4 years, and then the other ones, they kind of fell. He was just pretty much the same guy the whole time, for better and for worse. Like, in the playoff games, he would score 40 the first couple games, and then he'd disappear for the last 4, and then they'd lose.
And I think that's probably his detriment on this list, is he faded in and out of games.
He was too easy to be made irrelevant, quote unquote, in a game.
Exactly.
Paul George, perfect spot. One of the best perimeter defenders. Could have been an MVP last year. Really good. Those Indiana teams before the leg injury is fantastic. After the leg injury, he actually got better after that year and a half of recovery. Perfect spot.
His defense became top notch.
Like, his defense even
he was already good, but like that injury, coming off that injury, his defense was.
It almost felt like he wasn't sure if he'd be quite the same offensive player, so he focused on defense. Like, I'll do something I can control. I can control effort. And
yeah.
I think he's an MVP candidate next year right now as it is. Then the 2 guards on this list. Kobe Bean Bryant and Dwayne Father Prime Flash Wade. So this is an interesting one because these guys are... I wasn't able to find an all-2000s decade team on NBA.com. Maybe I missed it back in... Both of these guys should be on the first team for that. The only reason you might not put Dwayne Wade on there is because you have Kobe there and you only want 1 2 guard.
Yeah.
But they have 2 2 guards here, so I'm saying these are your first team all-NBA guards for the 2000s, all-decade team.
Yeah.
I put him. I know Dwayne Wade's a shooting guard. I don't care. I put him on there over Steve Nash, over Jason Kidd, like all those other guys that were fantastic. Dwayne Wade was a different beast. I mean, he may not have like that. He doesn't have the MVP that Steve Nash has necessarily. Granted, both of Steve Nash's MVPs are contested. He's the third best shooting guard of all time. For this 2010s, I feel weird having him on the third team for that reason. Honestly, like I know these last few years he. Like, he's coming off the bench this last year, the year before that.
Still averaging 20, though,
And when you look at it, like, they say he rode LeBron's coattails. First of all, 2010, he was a stud. So, like, he was fantastic. 2011, when LeBron's first year, they're like the 2010-2011 season. He was the Finals MVP. Does anyone forget? Like, before Dirk went absolutely apish, who honestly Dirk could possibly be on this list.
And, we'll get to that one in a second.
He's another one of those guys that was so good for those first 3 to 4 years. He's another guy that all 2000s decade team, first team, second team, he's right there. So, like, maybe just for that finals run alone, you can give him a spot on, like, the third team here. But I digress. Anyway, Dwayne Wade was really, like, 2000. He was the Finals MVP, and a lot of people thought maybe he's the best player in the league. And he was 4 All NBA teams, and that was early in the decade, I know, but.
I honestly look at Dwayne Wade, and I'm right there with you. Like,
and he didn't really fizzle out. I mean, he dropped off slowly, and then he kind of like that last season when they got blown out by the Spurs. He was not the same. He was not healthy. That first year with LeBron was gone though. He took the Heat to the playoffs. He drug Whiteside into an $80 million contract.
Yeah, like
they were 1 game away from beating Toronto and being in the Eastern Conference Finals.
People forget just how. I feel like him being in Miami is the worst thing to ever happen for his career.
Because people
to not ever leave, and then people look at him leaving. Like, when he left Miami to go to Chicago, that last year in Miami, he wasn't terrible by any means. He was
good.
Probably one of the top 5 shooting guards of that season, like, if not the top 3.
He wasn't an all-star still, like, and it wasn't like a pity all-star, quote-unquote, or like this last one was honorary. He was an all-star guard. Like, he wasn't as explosive as James Harden and those guys stat-wise, but... And he plays defense, which a lot of these other guys do. Him and Kobe are defenders, which has to go into... Anyway, move forward. And that first year in Chicago, they went to the playoffs with him, Jimmy Butler, and Rondo. Like, they gave that Celtics team hell. If it wasn't for Rondo going down, they beat that Celtics team. That was the first seed with... And who knows where they go after that. And obviously, the Cleveland experiment with Wade did not work out. And then he goes back to Miami, and he was pretty good with Miami in these limited roles. I mean, he showed he still kind of had it. He just decided, like, look, I'm not quite this 27-point-a-game NBA Hall of Fame legend, so I'm going to just let it go. And I think he was too unselfish of a superstar in his career with LeBron to get rings where he could average 25 points a game this decade if LeBron wasn't there. If he's still his team and he's healthy, he has to be second team just from the early part of the decade, in my opinion.
I agree. I think Dwayne Wade and Kobe is the different story. He did fall off after the Achilles injury, but with that said, we're still talking about Kobe Bean Bryant, who, if right this very moment, showed up at any court in the country and challenged anybody to a one-on-one, that man wins. Kobe Bryant he wins. I don't care who you are. I don't care what. That man will whoop you like nobody's ever whooped you before.
I know I talked about Kevin Durant being the best best individual scorer of all time in the NBA, or like he's on the pace for that. I still think Kobe's the best offensive player we've ever seen, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
We could talk about that another time. We'll do some other fun stuff with that at a different point. I don't want this to go on for 4 hours.
Yeah,
but anyway,
no,
what he did early, he won a title in 2010, like the 2009-2010 season. I hate the NBA because it splits like that. It's weird. 2011, they were supposed to go to the finals to play that Heat team. This was finally the LeBron-Kobe thing. Unfortunately, they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Mavericks.
Yeah.
2012, they tried the super team thing. It didn't work, but Kobe killed.
Yeah, Kobe still had a great season.
He averaged like 26.
He told Dwight Howard, he basically ruined Dwight Howard's career by calling him a baby.
Pretty much, yeah. And then that 2013-ish, I think it was season, 2013-2014, where the Achilles thing happened. He was averaging 28 points a game on almost 50% shooting. It was his best career year before that.
And let's not forget, he hit both free throws after he tore his Achilles. Like, completely ruptures his Achilles, hobbles over to the free throw line. No, I got this. Takes both free throws and walks off the court under his own power.
Like, obviously, Kobe is the best, is in all decades 2000 team, first team, unquestionably. He's got to be at least third team just from the early part of the decade. He was the best player in basketball, arguably, for the early parts. If not, maybe 2 or 3. Like, him, Wade, and LeBron were always in that. And then there's Duncan, and like as far as top 5, those 3 were staples up until the Achilles injury, really.
Yeah, and even coming back from the Achilles, it was still he was still good. It was just he was good in a different way. He wasn't the Kobe of before. He wasn't the I'm gonna dice you up with my dribble and then take you off a dribble move. No, he's like I'm gonna pick my spots and still manage to score 20.
And it's not going to be as efficient. He was older. His explosiveness was gone. He was recovering from a terrible injury. He's old. I mean, it happens. He's still made, I think it was 7 All-Star teams probably 1 or 2 of those was just because he was Kobe. But
yeah.
And he still averaged, 25 points a game. And then he's got to be second team just from how good he was early on. Like, we were talking about these other guys that got it because how good they were late. These guys were dominant and winning titles early on. Like, James Harden is fantastic of a stat machine he is.
Hasn't won a title.
And if you want him on first team, that's fine, but that means Kobe and Wade got to be on second team. Like, if we go up to second team, you got Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook up there. I like Chris Paul on second team, but not over Dwayne Wade or Kobe necessarily.
I think, honestly, this is one that you have to have 3 guards. I think Chris Paul, Kobe, and Dwayne Wade sit it on the second team together.
Honestly, you can even keep Russ there, just have 4 guards if you're going by the 4 best players. And
I think Russ is third team. I don't think he took off. I don't think he took off until
KD left in that
KD's ankle injury the year before he left.
Yeah, when he started realizing, hey, I could get triple dubs.
Exactly.
And kind of fell in love with it.
And then now he's the triple double machine that he is, the stat chaser.
The thing that kills us is efficiency is so bad. I mean, his 40-ish% shooting and his 18% from the free throw line or whatever it was this last year, like he's too much of a roller coaster. Like, I get it, the triple double thing on paper, 24, 7, and 9. I think he's third team as well. And then even in that finals game against the Heat, and I think his game 4 when he had 40-ish points, he kind of messed it up there at the end too. He's fantastic. He's obviously has to be on one of these teams. Having him on second team is not wrong, but having Kobe and Wade on the third team just feels kind of wrong, honestly.
Yeah, and let's not forget he's also a key member of the team that gave up a 3-1 lead to the Golden State Warriors.
And which honestly, if it wasn't for KD being so damn good around everything surrounding that would affect him too. But he's done so much before and after that, it doesn't hurt him as much as it hurts Westbrook in this case. Unfortunately for Russ, it might not seem fair, but that's the way it goes.
Russ was determined by that game. He got diced up by Steph Curry
and Klay Thompson dropping Game 6. Klay Thompson, my God, like Russ, you gotta get out there.
And that's okay. So that brings us to snubs. You mentioned Klay Thompson. I think he's a guy that might make this list because of what he's done over the last 6 years.
Because honestly, he was pretty much good from the get-go. He wasn't as dominant. He wasn't as much of an all-star, but he was good from the get-go. So you can make a case for him as well, too. Yeah. I agree with that.
And then I got also DeMarcus Cousins. I like I said early on, I think people forgot the 2010 through 2015 years. We're talking the best center in the NBA during those times. Like, absolutely
Offensively for sure. I'm going to say still leaves some to be desired defensively, but still the best center. Maybe Marcus Gasol or other guys can compete because they play both ends. But I agree with you. Like, best offensive center in the game, and it's not even close, really.
And doesn't even get a sniff on this list. Doesn't even get a mention. Like,
I think there's some players like you must have forgot.
Up until the injury, he was that dude. The trade to New Orleans, everybody forget. Like, it was a 3-team trade, a blockbuster trade during the All-Star game.
And honestly,
that's what's crazy to me is is he was an all-star every single year up until his injury.
And he did it on, unfortunately, a really crappy Kings team with really crappy coaches for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, like, pretty much, I think he only had one coach that he liked there, and I can't even remember who it was off the top of my head, but they got rid of him real quick. You tried the George Karl experiment, he made it worse, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. George Karl was too much of a in-your-face coach for DeMarcus, unfortunately.
So if I'm reworking just with these 15 players we have, I'm going to keep Team 1 just how it is. I'll just leave that as is because I don't really want to – I kind of want to take James Harden off of there, maybe bump up Chris Paul, for example, because of a longevity. But I'll leave it for now. You know what? Yeah, I'm just going to leave it for now. I'm going to swap around with 2 and 3. I'm going to take Melo and Blake Griffin and drop them to Team 3. And I'll move up Kobe and Wade. That's really the only thing I'm going to change. I'm going to leave Westbrook there. Anthony Davis stays there for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to leave Westbrook there simply because basically that how he ended it with the triple doubles and the MVP in the finals appearance. So this second team's going to have a bunch of guards and Anthony Davis. But this is not – we talk about positionless basketball. We're not talking about positions here. We're talking about who should be on these teams, and that's how I have it right now. Because if you look at Team 3, there is no center there. I mean, Giannis is a massive man with length, but he's not a center. LaMarcus is a power forward who, when they put him at center, he underperforms. Paul George, power forward. Kobe and Wade, 2 guards. Like, if we're going by positions, we'll talk differently, but just for the best players, Kobe and Wade got to be on the second team, just from the dominance up until 2016-ish.
And see, for me, so I'm actually going to change something on the first team. I do want to drop Kawhi down to Team 2. And I'm going to bump up somebody from Team 3, and that's Paul George. Because for this time, early in the 2000s, in those Pacers teams going mano-a-mano with LeBron every year. And he was the guy guarding LeBron. He was the Kawhi before Kawhi. You know, he gave the blueprint for how to stop LeBron.
Stop in quotes.
Well, yeah. I mean,
don't let him
limit LeBron. You know,
keep him from shooting 58% to 52%, basically.
And barring an ankle injury, that awful ankle injury while performing for his country, you know, he was that guy. He was in the talk to be the next LeBron, the next KD. Like, he was in that top 3 conversation for many years. So for me, I think he is good enough to be on the first team for what he did pre-injury and in the last 2 years, especially at OKC. He is. I mean, you don't do what he did last year and not be one of the best players in the league. Like, he is that good.
I can't really blame you and say that's wrong by any means. The one reason I don't really want to move Paul George up is in the playoffs he hasn't minus those mano-mano with the Heat teams. Since that injury, he hasn't had a lot of playoff moments where it's like, oh, Paul George. He had playoff P for one game, and then after that he scored 3 points against the Jazz and was like 2 of 18. Like,
yeah.
And obviously I'm not really arguing he's fantastic, but him and Kawhi are kind of in the same trajectory. Like, Kawhi did more in a shorter time, where Paul did a little bit more over a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, with all that said, I will say upside on all this, like we talked about earlier, if we're doing a 2020s team or 2015 on, Kawhi's up in the first team.
Well,
no doubt. Paul George doesn't even sniff it.
I would honestly even consider putting Kobe or Wade up in that first team on this and taking off James Harden, just based on the fact that James Harden hasn't even sniffed a finals besides that OKC one where he was terrible -1/2 in Game 2.
And that's another one I'd change on the first team would be James Harden for Chris Paul. I do think early in the 2000s, Chris Paul was just so much better than any. He's been the best point guard in the league for.
He had a 6-year
almost
run
2
there
decades.
where he was
Like,
the best point guard. Like, I think he's fallen off a little bit, but as far as pure pass first, he was, if not, he's been a top 3 guy since he came into the league. Honestly, he's a pass first point guard.
Yep. So that leaves me with on the second team. I would drop Blake and Melo and replace with Wade and Kobe as well.
I think we're on board that Kobe and Wade are at least team 2. If not, you can make a case for team 1. But I think even we're like, just from the longevity purpose, we'll keep them off. Like, they're 2000s players that happen to carry over.
Exactly. And those 2 plus you got James Harden, you have Kawhi, and I'm leaving Anthony Davis on this list. And then dropping Russell Westbrook, Blake Griffin, Melo, all down to third team to join LaMarcus and Giannis. If I can't pick off anybody from this top 15, otherwise I'm kicking Giannis off and putting DeMarcus Cousins in this third team.
We don't have enough time to go over all of this. So
that would be the only change I make. That's somebody that's not on this list. I just think DeMarcus Cousins just got shafted based off of him being in Sacramento and then the injury.
So long story short is probably a lot of the players can't really argue with, but haven't seen Kobe and Wade on third team either. You keep them off because they weren't the Hall of Fame selves, or you put them on tier 2 on the second team because they are still that good in their short span.
Yep.
So we'll go from the court. We'll of course talk a little bit about the fights coming up this week. We got some big ones coming up. We got the heavyweight title rematch, DC versus Stipe. This is an interesting one because for me, when I look at it, heavyweights it ends anyway. When they throw punches, the gust of wind from their punch can knock out an average human being.
Yeah.
And it's an instant rematch for Stipe, and DC's fought once and had some back injuries since then. Do we see a repeat of the first, which, weirdly enough, in UFC title fights, more than 50% of the time, the previous winner wins again? It's almost, very rarely do you see the title change hands after that, in a title fight-specific rematch, I should say. But DC is old now, too. He's 40, and he's had some back injuries going along, so I'm curious about that. And how does Stipe react? I mean, he took a year off. He had the birth of his daughter. Does that refocus you? Does that distract you a little bit? That's an intriguing one. So I'm really, usually when you see rematch, it's like, why would I watch something if I know how it ends? I've seen this before. This one has a different feel to it. I have an odd feeling that Stipe could come out there and just keep his hand tight to his chin coming out of the clinch, and he's kind of beating up on DC a little in that first round. Just stay at distance, pick apart. He's the bigger, stronger man. Just use his assets to his advantage a little bit better than he did before.
Yeah, I do think, they talk about having a kid changes you, right? For a fighter, it might give them more to fight for.
For some people, we've seen it work. I mean, like Jorge Masvidal, when he had the kids, okay, I got to get this money, and he has two of the best knockouts in the last few years.
Yeah, so I do think, to your point, I do think Stipe has a chance to come out and absolutely put it to DC. I say that saying, nobody's ever put it to DC for real. Let's be honest. It's happened one time in his career.
Besides the John Jones fights, realistically, yeah. I mean, Gus took it to him, but he still prevailed. But
yeah. So I think Stipe has a chance to actually come out and put on a great performance. I don't think DC wins, but that's because I think, to your point, DC is old. I do think he's at that point where it's like a WWE fighter. They write it into the script where he can't retire with a belt, or because it just doesn't make for a good story, so they cause an upset. So I think it's kind of the same thing. I think Stipe comes out and actually puts it to DC, and DC's on the back foot from the get-go. Now, I say that knowing full well I'm probably going to eat my words on this weekend, so we'll see. But in my opinion, I do think Stipe wins.
I selfishly want to see DC win. I want to see him and John Jones fight a third time at heavyweight, but I want to see DC from 2 or 3 years ago, fully healthy, fully rolled. Maybe he feels better than he ever has before. Maybe the injury, healing and rehabbing, I think he had a small surgery. Maybe he's better than he ever is before. But when I look at what normally happens with back injuries and at this age and in a sport where you are fighting another human being, I don't see how it's weird, because on the one hand, all the stats with rematches point towards DC winning, because that's just how it normally goes. I mean, usually that's how it happens. If you win the first fight in a title fight in a finish, you'll probably win the second one. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's well over 50%. But from physical, medical, doctor type angle, boy, that's going to suck for DC if Stipe takes it to him, because that's a big boy and you have back issues and you're really short and really kind of pulling some extra weight there. I mean, you should not be 5'10" and 240 necessarily. So
Probably not, no.
So we're going to see how that one plays out. But that one's just kind of one that fight fans love, but it's not as big as it should be necessarily for non-fight fans, just more casual fans. But the fight on the card that is for the casual fans, the people's main event, Anthony Showtime Pettis and Nate Diaz, returning since his second Conor McGregor fight 3 years ago, almost to the date, weirdly enough.
That man is a monster.
And he's fighting at 170, which means he's going to walk in there probably 186 or something like that. Because he's not, allegedly he gets up to around 180s to 190s when he doesn't have to worry about cutting weight. They say in that second Conor fight he was in the 80s, which I don't know if I believe that. I'm going to say maybe 183 to 85 at the max. He's not 190 to 200.
That's pushing it.
And Anthony Pettis is pretty much the same size as Conor, honestly. He's a little differently proportioned, where Conor's all back and shoulders, where Pettis is a little more less built like a gorilla, like Conor is. And Pettis is, it's weird because I watched some of the pre-fight things and some of the fighters pick him. They say Anthony Pettis is on a tear, he's killing it. Well, he's coming off a fun fight against Tony Ferguson in which he lost because he broke his hand, which was fun, but he still lost. And a ridiculous knockout over Wonderboy Thompson, who nobody does that. Nobody does that to him. I thought Wonderboy was dead. But Anthony Pettis is still small for this weight division, and Nate Diaz is still a lot bigger. The one way Pettis wins is if he chops the legs down, because the Diaz's die by leg kicks. But if Diaz, from what I've seen on just social media stuff, Diaz is ready to go. He's not coming in there soft like he has at previous times. He's coming in ready to roll and to make money. And if he wins, I hope he calls out Conor and goes on his rants in typical Diaz fashion for the sake of ratings and For the simple fact of keeping this PG to PG rated, I will not quote any of his rants, but and I don't have a beat button, so I think it'd be fun if he wins. The weird thing with Pettis is if he comes out and he maintains distance and uses the leg kicks and fights really technically sound and doesn't try to kill Diaz, he has all the tools to win. Problem is, like, even his coach said, if you want to bring out the hood rat in Anthony, he's got a little hood rat in him. He's from the streets of Milwaukee. He's seen some shit. He, in his amateur career or his early pro career, he KO'd a guy with a dislocated shoulder. So he's a little hood, but at the same time, has the fame changed a little bit. I mean, he did leaving after the broken hand in his last fight. Maybe some people would question. I don't. I mean, a broken hand. Good luck punching with that thing against Tony Ferguson. Which Tony Ferguson is a lot like Nate Diaz, and if Nate Diaz checks those leg kicks, I mean, just once in your career.
Yeah, just one time.
Marches forward and puts pressure on Anthony, where we've seen Anthony, he doesn't handle pressure as well because he needs space to kick and all his flashy showtime, his punches. Amazing in space. When you crowd him, he's not as... He can get had if you crowd him. I mean, he's lost to guys he should not lose to because they crowded him. And if Nate Diaz gets you in a box, he might be the best phone booth fighter. Him and his brother Nick are some of the best phone booth fighters that don't, as far as stand-up, that I've ever seen. Just, they get in tight and they throw 4,000 punches before you can say 4,000 punches. It's amazing, and they don't get tired, so.
And they have the long arms of the law.
And they can get space if they need it to, because he's going to have the reach advantage, so. This is a fun one on paper. I can't wait. Like, this could be a main event. This, honestly, is probably a little more highly anticipated than DC Stipe.
Well, that's because they can trash. I don't care who you are. The Diaz's, the one thing, if they were terrible fighters, I would still tune into their fights, because that man, those brothers, they can trash talk.
And they don't even try to do it on purpose. They're the most unintentionally funny people ever. Like, it's hilarious. They have their own cult.
Then you have DC over there who's, like, trying to trash talk, and you're just like, okay, please put down the granny material and move to your A game. Like, get a ghostwriter. Do something. Like, call in your inner Drake. Like, do something, man.
You could tell DC's not a natural trash talker. Like, he's got a little bit of cockiness to him where it comes out, which you have to be when you're that good at everything you do. Yeah. But he's not his natural bolstering it out like Conor and, like, even Diaz, who doesn't even do it on purpose. It just comes naturally, unintentionally. So this one will be fun, and I can't wait. And if it goes to the ground, oh my God, the ground game between these two of the best submission guys. Oh my God, I almost hope it somehow ends up on the ground, even though neither one of them's going for takedowns. And then the USADA Bowl is the third main one here, the USDA Drug Testing Bowl. Paulo Costa versus Yoel Romero, two guys that I don't understand how bodies look like that because they're not supposed to occur in nature. But
well, you said it yourself, the USADA Bowl, so that's why.
Exactly, like they both look like they were built with a knife and a chisel and a hammer. They both hit extremely hard. Paulo Costa, I think, might hit a little bit harder, maybe a little bit better traditional boxing technique. But Yoel Romero was made in a laboratory of pure testosterone and freakish Spider-Man DNA and whatever else
they call that HGH.
And I'm talking about just like his build before, including that too, like how fast and explosive. He's Godzilla in human form. It doesn't make sense.
He is.
He's got better wrestling if he decides to use it. He's one of the best wrestlers. If he wants to use it, he should be able to take Paulo down and take it there. But for some reason, he doesn't use his wrestling randomly. It's weird. Power, like I said, I give it to Costa. Explosiveness, it's all Yoel Romero. I think if they go into the middle and they collide, that's where Costa has a chance. If Romero does this thing where he's like, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, oh my God, explosion, and then somebody dies. If he does that, I think he can catch Paulo, because Paulo does not know how to... He's a blind bull that only sees red, unfortunately. Sometimes I saw it in this Uriah Hall fight, which I think was his last fight. He only could go straight forward. Uriah even dropped him, because Uriah Hall's very athletic, very sneaky, good on the feet, but he didn't handle the pressure as well. He's very like a bigger Anthony Pettis and maybe a little less skilled. And Costa, if he stops in the middle and uses technique, uses his footwork, he could catch Yoel. I mean, Yoel's defense isn't locked down. I mean, Robert Whittaker pieced him up pretty well. He's lost a lot of these fights that he's won. He's been losing until he randomly explodes with some random flying knee, Superman punch, uppercut, Hail Mary shot out of nowhere. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I forgot. Rules don't apply to you. So this one's going to have people on the edge of their seats the whole time if they know what to look for. So this is probably one of the deeper fight cards we've had in a while, just because you have 3 main event worthy fights off the top. I mean, I'm excited. This is the one I've kind of been waiting for. We talked about the other fights that have like a good fight here, a good fight there. Like Colby Robbie was good, but the rest of the card was meh. Valentina and Liz Carmouche this last week, the rest of the fights were meh. But this one, it's basically as soon as the pay-per-view starts, like, all right, let's go. Even the prelims are pretty good on paper too, so this is a good weekend for fights coming up. I'm excited. It seems like one of the weekends in August, they always have a really big fight card the last few years. which is kind of cool because this year they didn't really have a can't miss UFC Expo event where they put like Anderson Silva or UFC 200 or whoever the big star is at the time there. So this is kind of the blockbuster hit of the summer, and I'm excited for it. And I love them towards the end going right into football season. Like I remember when we watched Nate Diaz and Connor too. As soon as it's over, we're like, wow, such a great event. Oh my God, we're still pumped. Then right as that kind of started to subside, we're like, oh yeah, football season's here. This is awesome, cool.
Yeah, I gotta start I gotta get my fantasy football team together for the next week. So, yeah, I know it was exactly what happened last with the Connor fight. I do remember that one. We literally left the fights like, wow, that was a great fight. Wait, crap! I only have like an hour until I have to set up my, fantasy football lineup. So yeah, it's always a great time of the year.
It was definitely a good time. And so, anything you want to preview ahead for next week? What should they expect to tune into next week?
Yeah, so next week we continue our top 5 rankings. We're looking like tight ends and linebackers, so non-pass rushing linebackers.
So we're looking at guys like, spoiler alert, Luke Kuechly and Bobby Wagner. Those type of guys will probably be on there.
They might make an appearance up there. You never know. Maybe we're gonna throw some Philoops in there. But,
oh my God! Here comes Sean Lee.
Yeah, never gonna happen.
Not anymore, unfortunately.
That man's old and decrepit. He's retired. But yeah, we'll start with that, and then who knows what we diverge into next. We do like to wander, so who knows what you're going to get from us.
Maybe we'll definitely recap the fights as well, too, especially if they live up to the hype I think they will. I'll be trying to live tweet some of them this weekend, too, so follow us on Twitter as well. And who knows? I mean, Hard Knocks has been pretty interesting so far. We got an episode coming out in these next couple days. Maybe something big happens there. Maybe AB retires. We have no idea what's going to happen there. Maybe Derek Carr yells at him and throws a football at the back of his head and knocks some sense into him. Who knows how this can go?
Yeah, I think the only thing more unpredictable than our show is AB, what he's going to do. So stay tuned. We don't know yet either.
We should just change this to the Antonio Brown mindset. But anyway, that does it for this week's episode of High Low Sports Podcast. Kelsey, any final words?
Nah, that does it, man. Can't wait for the fight.
Can't wait. This will be a great one. Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go ahead and watch us on YouTube as well. We're trying to expand this as far as we can, as fast as we can. We want to try to get some viewers on here as well. See if their opinions match up with ours. Maybe we can get a little debate with some of the people who listen with us. Reach out and interact, because you see a lot of the people on TV, they kind of say the same things and they yell at each other, which is kind of entertaining but sometimes gets old. We're kind of more into compare, contrast, speaking with a little bit of energy here and there, but just talking sports, not yelling sports. So
we debate without the yelling. Well, sometimes. Maybe we yell at our dog in the background.
We conversate without throwing fists verbally, basically. We try to make it quote unquote like a UFC fight, not a WWE event, which sometimes they cross over a little bit. But so honestly, feel free, spread the word if you enjoyed our podcast. Tell your friends' friends, see if they're interested.
Like, subscribe, and share.
If you want to possibly be on the show, I mean, obviously that's not very large right now, but it can only grow. It's only up from here. Feel free to message us on any of our social media platforms. We'd love to get other people on here, see what they have to say. And yeah, so only up from here. Hopefully you guys enjoy the show. Tune in again next week.